Small to medium businesses don't have access to corporate level thinking when it comes to marketing. And what that's creating is this negative cycle where they understand their operating market, they have some sort of business plan, they secure some budget, and they jump straight into tactics. And without doing the foundational work to prepare you for strategic marketing, those results are going to be very up and down. There's going to be a lot of waste. And then we have this culture now where a lot of SMBs just believe that marketing doesn't work, that it's a black hole. So we wanted to do something about that. We thought there had to be a way where we could make marketing transparent, easier to understand for small business, and something that SMB leaders could participate in with confidence. So we put together a framework as to how small to medium businesses can attack marketing. They need some support to do that. But our framework is really about understanding what strategic marketing is, all of the work you need to do to prepare for an engagement, and making sure that when you do start spending money through digital marketing or through campaigns, you've got a high level of confidence that those things are going to work, and trying to build back confidence in marketing for small businesses, because it really is at an all-time low at the moment, which I hate. That really hurts me, Mary Lou.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I'm excited because today I get to talk to an amazing person, a leader, a woman who is building a business that is helping businesses around the world. Her name is Brooke Chapman, and she is coming to us today from the beautiful Gold Coast of Australia. Brooke, are you ready for kickoff?
I'm so ready, Mary Lou. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, team, here are some things that I know about Brooke Chapman. Well, she started her career as a television journalist before moving into corporate communications and public relations roles. She has been advising leading brands across the mining, travel, property, recruitment, and not-for-profit sectors. And right now, she is working to assist SMBs all over the world in achieving sustainable, repeatable success in marketing with her company, 3x3 and 9 Boxes. She is the executive director at 3x3 and 9 Boxes, and she's going to tell us more about what that framework is and why it matters. She is experienced working with boards and business owners. She helps to transform underperforming marketing functions by transitioning organizations out of tactical lead generation and into strategic marketing methodology that's aligned with broader business goals. And I know, Brooke, I've talked to so many small business owners, and I am a small business owner myself. So I know that these things are definitely challenges constantly for businesses everywhere. And I'm so excited you're here today to share what you've learned about what works and what doesn't. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm so happy to have this conversation.
Yeah. So let's start things off with you sharing with Team PYP the story of when you got the call to leadership. Obviously, you've had a robust career. You haven't been doing the same things for your whole work life. What do you remember about when you realized, Brooke, that you were a leader, or when did you get that call, that proverbial call to lead? How old were you? What was going on in your life? Bring us into that time of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that leadership can start very early, and it did for me. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings. So I think that from a young child, I was, without even knowing it, really developing some leadership skills and realizing that that was something that was a part of me and something that I wanted to pursue. And that continued through, my sporting career at high school, and then, through university. But in a professional sense, I think where I really answered the call to leadership, I was in my first chief marketing role position. And, the way that I came to that position was a little bit unique. I accepted one role, a lesser role at the organization. 2 days before I started, the COO called me and said that the chief marketing officer, had been moved on and I was going to be reporting directly to her. And I said, okay, that's fine. And then a month later, she actually offered me the chief marketing officer role, which was a huge surprise. And, all of a sudden I had inherited a team of 17 people when
Wow.
I was relatively young. And when you haven't led in a corporate before, it was quite daunting. So it was very much a case of being thrown in the deep end. And I knew very quickly I needed to get some good advisors around me and I needed to get some help and support if I was going to make that a success. But I did. I really enjoyed that role and I loved the team that I worked with. And I think for me, it was a huge learning curve, but I wanted to be a good manager, a good leader of people. And I wanted to not make the mistakes of so many of the managers and the bosses that I had. So that was front of mind in that position.
Yeah. What mistakes had you experienced under, that umbrella of ineffective leadership? What were a couple that you distinctly recall?
Yeah, just not being empowered, not feeling that, I was a highly capable person, but not feeling that I was trusted to do my job and feeling that hovering over the top of me, that micromanagement. I knew I didn't like that. And I wanted my team to know that I believed in them. And to be honest, because I was relatively young and inexperienced in this role, I needed them to do their jobs. It wasn't a luxury to give them that empowerment. I needed them to step up. So I wanted to do that. I also wanted to make them feel that I didn't just support them from 9 to 5. I supported them in the whole of their life. And we are more than just what happens in an office during the day. Yeah, and I wanted them to know that anything they needed personally, I was there to support them and help them as well. And I had not necessarily had that in some of my previous roles. So they were probably the two things that I really wanted to achieve. But, for me, it was such a great introduction to leadership and they were very patient with me as I learned to lead. And some of the people from that team are still, very good friends of mine to this day. So, when you go on these journeys with people, it's transformative and it bonds you. And those connections are really important, as we go through life.
Most definitely. Now, how did you go about finding, you mentioned getting some advisors around you. For people listening who perhaps haven't done that yet, what's a way for a new leader who, to your point, thrown into the deep end, finds themselves in a position where, they're saying to themselves, wow, I don't know what I'm doing. And they probably have imposter syndrome. How did you go about finding those advisors, Brooke?
Yeah, look, I remember it really clearly. I sat down at my kitchen table and I thought, because I'd had this conversation, with my leader, and I said, I don't know if I can do this job. And she said, you can absolutely do it. I know what I'm getting here. I know you're inexperienced, but I can coach you, but you're going to have to get some other coaches. So she directed me to do that. And I remember sitting down at my kitchen table and breaking it down the way you would any other business problem. Where do I need help? I knew that I needed some technical help with marketing. While I was a marketer, there are whole areas of marketing that I wasn't skilled in. I needed a technical marketing support, someone who could help me be strategic. I needed a business support, someone who was skilled in general management and was able to help me to run a business function. I needed somebody who was also a great leader and understood people and the psychology of leadership. So I looked at my own network. I had a fantastic mentor who was a previous boss of mine, and she was an excellent general manager, and she filled that business gap for me. I had, in passing, met a fantastic woman who is one of the best strategic marketers I've ever met. And, I didn't know her well, but I called her and I had the courage to say, look, I need some help here. Would you help me? And what a stroke of luck that was, because she's now my business partner and we run 3x3 together. So, we got to know each other really well over 10 years and she helped me a lot. And so, it was really about just looking at the people I knew and the networks I had and not being afraid to reach out. And that's one of the key things I think as a leader, you need to be vulnerable. There's nothing as powerful as a vulnerable leader who's prepared to admit that they don't know it all and that it's a good thing to ask for help. So I embraced that pretty early, which I think has helped me on my journey.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about 3x3 and your 9 boxes framework. For those listening who've never heard of it, what is the work you're doing now, Brooke?
Yeah, sure. So, as I've mentioned, I've had three chief marketing officer roles with large multinationals, which gave me some fantastic experience. But Deb, who I mentioned, my co-director, and then also we've got a third director, Nicola. We all had these corporate roles as CMOs, and for one reason or another, we decided to leave corporate and we started doing consulting with small businesses. And what we found was that when we went into those small businesses, they wanted to have conversations with us about drafting a new brochure or building a website or really tactical, the front end of marketing. That was how they thought about marketing. And, that's just not what we do as marketing strategists. We think about the bigger questions. So it sort of dawned upon us that there's a problem here. Small to medium businesses don't have access to corporate level thinking when it comes to marketing. And what that's creating is this negative cycle where they understand their operating market, they have some sort of business plan, they secure some budget, and they jump straight into tactics. And without doing the foundational work to prepare you for strategic marketing, those results are going to be very up and down. There's going to be a lot of waste. And then we have this culture now where a lot of SMBs just believe that marketing doesn't work, that it's a black hole. So we wanted to do something about that. We thought there had to be a way where we could make marketing transparent, easier to understand for small business, and something that SMB leaders could participate in with confidence. So we put together a framework as to how small to medium businesses can attack marketing. They need some support to do that. But, our framework is really about understanding what strategic marketing is, all of the work you need to do to prepare for an engagement, and, making sure that when you do start spending money through digital marketing or through campaigns, you've got a high level of confidence that those things are going to work, and trying to build back confidence in marketing for small businesses, because it really is at an all-time low at the moment, which I hate. That really hurts me very low.
What's behind that all-time low, that black hole you mentioned? What do you think is the cause of it?
I think it's that impossible cycle of business. These businesses, they go in with all of the best intentions. They're really excited. They might have $50,000 to spend on marketing or $100,000 to spend on marketing, and then they engage with an agency to deliver some sort of tactical marketing campaign, and at the end of it, they're just left wanting. The results were mediocre. They just don't quite know what it did for their business. It wasn't tracked properly, and they're left thinking that, one of the things I hear all the time is marketing is a dark art. It's a gray area. It's a black hole. I hate hearing that because it really doesn't have to be. So, I think that's the key issue, is that SMBs have lost faith in marketing because there isn't a system that, we have systems for finance, we have systems for people and culture, but marketing is that final frontier that we need to systemize and have a methodology for, so that everyone understands what it is and how to prepare yourself well for marketing success. So, that's really what we've tried to create.
Okay. Yeah. You have a really cool framework, and obviously there'll be a link to your website on your show notes page, Brooke. Do you attribute this to the massive digital transformation the world has undergone in the last, say 15 years, really since the mid 2000s, when the second wave of the internet came about? And you've obviously been in a marketing role for a number of years and have seen the rise of all these platforms. Everything's a platform now. Just the other day, it was just this weird aha moment. I was watching a baseball game with my mom, and it seemed like every other ad was for another platform, whether it's to bet these betting, these sports books apps are really popular, or it's an app for the rewards program of a hotel chain. I mean, every company now is trying to drive consumers to their platform. And I think from being a consumer, one in a gazillion, right? I have fatigue about that. Like, I'm tired of, I don't want to go to another app. I don't even want to be on my phone. So I'm curious, is part of this issue that you're seeing and the heartbreak that you feel because we've had such a huge move to the online space, and to your point, there really isn't a rule book for how it works?
Oh, look, undoubtedly that plays into it for sure. Digital has just exploded. Look, the reality is that you have to have a strong digital presence if you're going to be a part of the consideration set for basically any type of customer, for any type of product or service these days. You do have to have a really strong presence. But I do think it has gone a little bit crazy. I hear from business leaders all the time that they're just exasperated. They're like, look, I've been told I've got to be here, 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 and here. How do I fund that? How do I manage that ongoing? How do I, is this going to actually have an impact on my business and deliver a commercial return? Businesses are confused about what channels they need to play in. They don't know what channels are right for them. And there's a feeling that they have to be everywhere. And they don't. They don't. They need to understand their customers really well. They need to understand where their customers want to have the conversations. And I think that the point that you raised about being overwhelmed is a really good one. You're not the only person that feels that way. So being present everywhere in a small way is not the answer. It's about really developing strong understanding of your customer behaviors, where they want to have the conversations with you, and the messages that they want to be receiving, how you can solve their problem, and tapping into that, having a few channels that are impactful and get you a return and engage with your customers. So we do see a lot of that overwhelm with the end user. We see a lot of overwhelm with small business leaders, and we try and break that down. And it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to be everywhere all the time.
No, you don't. However, if anybody just goes online, whether it's through your mobile device or a laptop or a tablet, we're inundated with the pressure or the sense of, well, everybody else is doing everything, so therefore if we're not, we're missing the boat, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. So when people work with you and your team, Brooke, and you bring in your framework, and you've talked about strategy versus the tactical approach. For listeners who may not understand the difference, could you explain what's the difference between hitting the tactical side of your business versus a strategic side?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're operating in a tactical space, you're thinking about what we call the window dressing. You're thinking about, this is what's going to be on my website. I'm going to run this campaign through Facebook. You're thinking about, the details and the how that really, those things aren't going to be right if you don't do what we call the back end and you don't close some of your foundational gaps. To be truly strategic, there's a few key things you need to have in your toolbox. First of all, you need to be reviewing and refining your market position. So this is absolutely critical. We have 9 boxes. Position is box number 1, and we spend a lot of time on it because if you don't get position right and you don't have absolute clarity as to where you sit in the market and what your differentiating factors are, if you're not clear on that yourself, your customer is not going to be clear on it, and your success is only going to be limited. Position guides all of the other 8 boxes, and it guides everything you do with marketing. So if your position is a bit off or a bit unclear, everything else is. So we spend a lot of time on that with businesses. The next thing is customer insights. It's really important to get it from the horse's mouth. A lot of business leaders, I'm not saying they don't understand their market and their business, but it's really important to have conversations with your customers outside of the day-to-day Customers and markets change and evolve. Are you keeping pace with that change? Do you know how they view your product or service? Do you know how they want to have the conversation and the messages that will resonate with them and inspire them to buy? We need to understand that. We need to know what the pathway to purchase looks like and what the moments that matter are, so we can then influence them. So customer insights for us is just a table stake, absolutely critical to building the right strategy. The next thing is mapping the buyer's journey. So, for each of your, customers fall into different groups for every business. The buyer's journey needs to be mapped for those groups. And then that's how you build your channel strategy. So rather than feeling like we've got to be present in every channel for group, customer A, what is really important to them and where should we be present to have impactful conversations that result in action? So, we work through all of that for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
There's a range of other strategic things we have to do, but that's sort of the top 4 things that we look at initially. And then we work through the other boxes. The thing about our framework is that, gone are the days where you stumbled on a channel, and it was your silver bullet and you went viral.
Right.
That's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, good marketing is about, all of those 9 boxes, those 9 core areas of sales and marketing. You need to be performing in all of them and improving in all of them in a systematic, methodical way. And that's how you get those gains over time and you get business growth. So that's how we work with businesses to make sure that they're looking at the whole, as opposed to just thinking about, what's that silver bullet? What's that channel that's going to give me that great exposure?
Right. So you're bringing up what here in the States we call the lottery effect, looking for that one thing that's going to hit the jackpot, and make all your problems go away, which everybody logically knows is completely a false perception because, what is that one song? More money, more problems. I mean,
totally. It's, it's a game of inches.
It is.
So, you need to know across those 9 core areas that we've outlined, you need to know how you're performing across all of those. And then you need to prioritize what you tackle first and over time, how you become what we call fit for purpose for marketing. And it does take time. It's not a quick solution. And I think one of the key mistakes that small business owners can make is that thinking that marketing is a project. If I just get this website, if I just get this suite of brochures, if I just get this video, then it will be good. Marketing is something you need to work on all the time. And yes. It's something that you really have to make sure becomes, that it is the growth driver of your business and it needs to be treated as such.
Wow.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
You are getting into the crux of, I think, just about every business today is one, overwhelmed with the number of options that are being promoted, thrown at us. And again, I wrote a blog post recently called "No One Handed Us a Manual." We all just entered the internet with no guidelines. It was just, it's been a free-for-all. I think in the last, I don't know. I don't know how COVID affected it and that was one of the questions that I was thinking about when you were talking about going in and meeting with small business owners. Have you and your team noticed a difference between the pre-COVID world and the post-COVID world in terms of meaning the being locked down? Okay, because COVID is still around. It's just we're not isolated the way we were for a couple of years. In terms of the conversations you're having with these business owners, what have you noticed is one of the biggest differences, if any?
Yeah, great question. COVID has had a huge impact on businesses in a marketing sense because we have been collectively, as a human race, we have all been through a life-changing event, and the changes of that and the transformation we've all gone through has been like over sort of 24 months, right? It's been a long period of time. And what we have found as marketers is that pretty much every market has changed. The way that customers behave has completely changed. The degree is different across industry, but we are recommending all of our clients review their and refine their position, and everyone speaks to their customers again and updates their insights, because there have been big shifts in the market. And, you know, for some businesses that has resulted in opportunity. I think about our business. We have really grown through COVID. We've been able to grow globally because of some of the virtual meeting platforms that we're able to tap into now. But other businesses have really seen their businesses dry up, and they've needed to pivot and adapt. So, there are challenges and opportunities that come out of these major events. And we've been having conversations with businesses around which camp they fall in, and how can they either take advantage of opportunities, or how do they change and adapt to more challenging conditions. But again, it all comes down to that understanding customers, what's driving the customer behavior, and then how do we adapt our businesses to meet those customers and still make ourselves relevant. But yeah, we've seen huge shifts over the last 24 months. And, for me, I just think that markets are changing and evolving at a more rapid pace now. We have to get used to that. And that's why something like customer insights has to become a part of our normal operating rhythm.
And where would a small business or a medium business get these customer insights? I mean, we hear about data, right? Collecting data, but if a small business owner is listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, well, where am I going to get this? I mean, yeah, if you have a physical presence somewhere, you might have someone come in and tell you to your face. I know there's feedback loops that are built into some websites, for example, but it help us understand, where do these insights, where can we find them?
Yeah, look, it's a really good point, because again, to our earlier point around small businesses kind of being starved of marketing strategy, they've also been starved of access to good research. It's been something that's been like the purview of corporates, because it's been expensive.
Yeah.
There are a range of businesses, ourselves included, that are delivering research and customer insights that are designed specifically for SMBs now, because it really does give you such an edge. So, you can, and I think sometimes we can think that these projects have to be bigger than they actually are. A lot of times for businesses, we will speak to just 10 or 12 of their customers, and that's enough for us to take the temperature, understand what's going on in their market, and make some changes to make sure that we're super relevant. So, I would strongly suggest engaging an external resource, an external researcher, to have those conversations. You just get so much more candid feedback when the customer isn't worried about hurting your feelings. So I would encourage you to do that and invest in that. But, like I say, these smaller scale qualitative research studies can give you a lot of support and a lot of value. The other thing is, there are a lot of free platforms that you can use to gauge customer satisfaction. Things like Net Promoter Score, getting some comments from your customers. What could we have done better? There are a bunch of platforms that could do that for you for free. But set that up and track it over time. How is your customer satisfaction going? When does it go up? When does it go down? I think it's really important to just make sure that you're always checking in with customers and seeing what you can do better. So, I think if businesses can engage with that combination of, the deep dive, detailed conversations to get to the heart of what customers want, coupled with just a few questions after a purchase or after an interaction that's delivered through an online platform, you're going to get a really good picture of what's going on.
Yeah, getting that data is so useful. But to your point, it just hasn't been accessible. There isn't a common place, because the digital landscape is still very young. And we had, if you look at a timeline historically of the internet and this digital transformation that the world has undergone in the last 20 years or so, it's remarkable. I think about, I'm having a conversation with you over a platform called Zoom to put out into the world a conversation on a podcast, right? Like, we didn't talk about these things 20 years ago. Just, it wasn't part. And in the grand scheme of human history, 20 years is nothing, right?
Totally.
And then you talk about, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was saying, even a couple of years ago, like hasn't COVID shown that we had all of these tools? We had Zoom,
Yes,
but we weren't using it effectively. It's with the pandemic has inspired behavior and change, in a pretty compact period of time. And we all do business differently these days, and we all behave differently. So, I for me find that you've got to be able to embrace change. We hear that all the time, but you have to be able to roll with it. You have to be able to see what's coming, and then you need to be able to adapt really quickly to stay relevant.
I agree 100%. And yet it is one of the hardest things. We humans, we don't like change. We want things to change, but we don't. I mean, that's the paradox. You walk in or meet with teams over Zoom, and they come to you and say, Brooke, we've got this problem here. And you begin to see patterns, and you're able to diagnose and then offer a solution. When you are dealing with a business leader who you can tell has just dug his or her feet into the sand and says, I just can't change. Like, what's your approach? How do you talk someone through that? I mean, is it just as blunt as saying, listen, you adapt or die? I mean, I hate to tell you, but that's what it is, Or do you have a softer way of leading them through?
Yeah, look, we get this quite a bit, and you have to take the emotion out of it. You have to take the personalities out of it, and you've got to give them the data. So, I've got a client at the moment that is an engineering business, and they've got a sales team that is very attached to the way that they've always done things, and they don't want to move on and let go of what are their pretty firm held beliefs and assumptions around how they should be doing their jobs. So we are engaging in research. We are actually showing them that this isn't how the customer wants to work with them anymore. The things have moved on, things have changed, and it's really hard to argue with data. When you speak to the customers and you've got it right in front of you, it's really hard to argue with that. So I think, take the personal out of it and make it about the issue. And you've got to have your evidence, and you've got to have your research, and then you can have a real conversation about change. And so that's our approach. But I think also the other thing is that when you are looking to create some change, you're looking to do things differently, you need commitment. It doesn't happen overnight. You need commitment for that change to take place over time, and you need a plan. So you can't be freewheeling it. So there's a couple of elements to really creating meaningful change and getting a business on a better track. And you've got to be strategic if you're going to achieve it.
Yeah, you absolutely do. What about cultural differences? You're working in Australia, but you work with companies all over the world. What's one common thread? Doesn't matter where a company comes from, and what's a distinct difference that you've noticed?
A distinct difference in culture. Look, I think that markets definitely behave differently. We work with some businesses that they might be based in Australia, but they've got operations in the UK and in New Zealand, and they are constantly surprised by how differently New Zealand and the UK behave. So again, treating your customers as if they are one, and as if that is just you cannot do that anymore. You can't get away with it. So customers, you've got to split them into groups. You've got to segment them, and you've got to understand what makes each of those groups tick. What is the commonality that brings them together? And usually that's around the problem they're trying to solve. But then around the periphery is some of those behaviors, buying habits, motivations, challenges, channels, around those things that they can change from market to market. So it's around knowing what unifies your customers, and then what also sets them apart, and how do you tailor your messages and your campaigns accordingly. So again, that can become a complex project. That's where, your customer insights are really important. Your buyer's journey mapping is really important. So for each of those customers, making sure you know what their pathway to purchase looks like. And then you're in a position with that information to pull together the plans that actually allow you to have impact.
Yeah, I love that phrase, pathway to purchase. I've never heard it said that way. And it really is a pathway. Very rarely, I've talked to people about, when we talk about how do you find new clients, how do you create growth for your business, whether it's small or medium. And it's very rare that I hear someone say, oh, someone just Googled us and immediately bought, especially if it's a higher ticket item. I think maybe for consumer goods, maybe on Amazon. I mean, again, if you're working in the manufacturing segment or sector, travel, I mean, there's a trust issue that it has to be addressed before someone's going to just turn their credit card over to a cold discovery with a Google search, right? Which comes, back to where do you invest your time and money? What channels are going to make the most sense? And then that comes down to, well, where are your customers hanging out online? If you're using an online marketing approach, which you said, if you don't have a digital presence, you're sunk in today's world. In general, I mean, I guess it depends on what the industry is, but in terms of lead times from, first touch to someone pulling out their credit card, do you see any averages in terms of a time for acquiring new customers that would then lead to those growth metrics?
Oh, look, it is highly variable.
Yeah.
It's highly variable, and it depends on the price point. It depends on the product in question. It depends on the method of purchase. It depends on what the intended use is for the product. All of this, it plays into the psychology of the buyer, and these purchasing pathways, they often aren't linear. Someone may be on the site, they may be holding the credit card, but something comes up in their mind and they put it down, and then they might not come back to it for another week. It's understanding there's this whole movement around neuromarketing and the psychology of buying that is so important in today's marketplace. And we've got to have an understanding of that for those key buying groups that we're trying to attract into our businesses. And if we understand that, and again, we've mapped that journey, what is that hesitation? They're holding the credit card and then they don't put their details in. Why is that? What can we do to re-engage them and prompt them back? We have to understand all of that. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you've got to have those conversations with customers to know what they go through and then apply that in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes time, and people are in a hurry. They want to see results yesterday. Yeah. And that's probably one of the harder conversations you have to have with business owners is, yes, we have these systems and all these technology leapfrogging kinds of things, but the fact of the matter is humans are still making purchasing decisions, and the rate of change is now so high that we as humans can't keep up. Our brains just cannot process how fast things are moving. And that plays into, I'm sure, what you're describing with the neuropsychology. What did you say? Neuromarketing? It was a really cool phrase, but just understanding the psychology of today's buyers. And we're dealing with multiple generations who each bring a set of variables to the equation. Gen Zers have much different buying habits or patterns than, say, a senior boomer.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I love marketing, right? There's so much at play. There's so many things to think about. It's complex. Mm-hmm. If you want a sugar rush of business, run your promotion, have your sale, take money off, but what's that doing to your business long term? Every business needs to look at what's their short-term sales strategy. How do you keep the cash coming into the business? How do you keep the products moving? But then also, how do you build brand over time, which is what the really successful businesses do to keep customers coming back. And sometimes we see that with small to medium businesses is that they're really focused on winning the week and winning the month and getting the sales in and the leads in now, that they don't work on that longer brand building piece, which is where you get the big gains over time and where you become one of those stalwarts of your industry and one of those leaders in the market. And it's really important that you invest at both levels to get that long-term success. It's not all about the sugar rush.
No, it isn't. And if any, I know when I get a sugar rush, boy, do I feel sick for a while afterwards.
Comes back to haunt you.
It's not all it's cracked up to be. It might feel good for a little while, and then you're like, why did I just do that? So good, really excellent point about the long game. It really is the long game. And going back to the first box you mentioned is knowing your position, knowing who you are and how you fit into the big picture of the industry that your business belongs to. And that's something that I think is either not taught or people just overlook. They get excited, they have an idea, and they want to just get out there and get going. And I think all business ownership is really a journey where sometimes things go well and you look back and say, I really don't know why that happened. And they honestly don't have an answer, why they had a period of growth. They have some guesses maybe, or they can attribute a variable like COVID, for example, on both sides. Some businesses completely went out of business because of COVID, and others like yours grew. And it's just the nature of things, right? It's unfortunately, it doesn't seem fair. However, I think with a framework like 9 boxes and the approach that you and your business partners take, it helps business owners feel more in control. And that's a good feeling,
Absolutely. You're in a position where you know what is actually driving your business.
Yeah.
And there's nothing holding you back when you do run your campaigns. You've done the work, you've done the preparation, you understand your customer, and you can spend that $50,000 and you can be relatively confident in terms of what's going to come back because you've done you've got no legacy issues holding you back. So, that's really what we try and give to businesses. But you're 100% right around the position piece. Do you know what type of business you are? Do you know what type of business you want to be? Stepping up out of the weeds and really determining why you're doing this and how you're going to not only make some money now and be a successful business now, but how are you going to create a business of value for 5 years and 10 years time? You've always got to have an eye on that, in the modern marketplace.
Yeah, you sure do. And you just described those conditions are, if people can't answer yes to those questions, what you offer could really help. Could really
absolutely
help those business owners. Yeah. Well, as we come towards the end here of this really great conversation, Brooke, I've learned a lot. Got me thinking about just several different things, everything from, your position to really thinking long term and knowing that business isn't just it's not a one-hit wonder. I always attribute, you look at musical artists, for example, who we all say, oh, there's that one-hit wonder. They had one big hit and that's what they're known for, versus the artists who consistently put out, records. I don't know if you call it records now, whatever they call them. They drop their songs or their albums. I think businesses can learn something from that, is look at the quality and know that you're not for everybody. I think that's the hard thing too, is there's this paradox of the internet that, we can reach everybody now. Well, everybody isn't your customer.
Sustainable businesses don't serve everybody. They know what they're good at. They know who they're serving, and they just try and achieve critical mass within their target market.
Right.
So yeah, and you're absolutely right. Marketing, and business, it is a game of inches, and it is about doing the hard yards over a long period of time. Mary Lou, if any of your listeners are interested in taking a bit of a temperature check on their current marketing performance, they can go to our website, 3by3.com, and we've got an online diagnostic tool, a benchmark. You can answer 45 questions about your business, takes 10 minutes, and we will give you a read as to, according to the 9-box framework, how you're performing in your marketing. And that might just open your eyes to a few things you could be doing better, and where you might need some support over the next 6 to 12 months.
That's incredible. Thank you for that. And team, on Brooke's show notes page at pyppodcast.com, there will be a link to that. If you're a small business owner, if you're working for a small business, or if you're part of a medium-sized business, that temperature check could really mean the difference between where you've been and as we're heading into a new year and we're moving away from the intensity of the COVID years and businesses opening up again. And I don't think there's such a thing as return to normal. I think we're building a new level of how things work. And, I can tell that you have the attitude of there's plenty for everybody. And if you just focus on the right things for your business, that's going to lead to growth and long-term success.
100%. Markets expand, markets evolve, and there is room for everybody to do well. We just need to be really focused on what our slice of the market is.
Absolutely. So as far as when you turn to experts in people who can guide you, Brooke, what's a book or two that have been instrumental on your leadership journey?
Okay, great. I have a couple that I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I listened to a podcast last week of yours, and the guy shared 5. So I'm not going to go that big.
Yeah, it was Dirk Van Reen, and he had 5.
Yeah. Look, there's a book that I read early in my leadership journey called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John C. Maxwell, one of the Bibles of leadership. And again, just, great lessons around being vulnerable as a leader, servant leadership, and, coming at leadership not from a place of superiority, but from a place of curiosity and wanting to learn and wanting to serve. So that's something that I dip into daily. Also, on a personal level, there's a book called "The Girl Who Fell from the Sky" by Emma Carey. And like most Australians in our early 20s, Emma was backpacking in Europe, and she went on a skydiving adventure, and the parachute didn't open. So it's an amazing story for anybody who wants to be inspired and learn about gratitude when your life is completely turned upside down. That is a fantastic book, just around, a positive mindset and creating a new life for yourself under, extremely changed circumstances. And then lastly, we are a running family. All of my husband and I run, my kids run, and we love Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. What a great story.
Love that book. Yes.
Yeah, I love how, because we're all making it up as we go along, right?
Yes,
everyone's just as terrified as everyone else in business, and I love such a big business, such a success story, but hearing his story of how many times it almost completely fell apart.
Yep.
I take a lot of heart from that, and I get a lot of motivation from that. So, they would be my 3, Mary Lou.
Thank you for that, Brooke. And just on a side note, so I raised my kids in Oregon. Phil Knight is an Oregonian. He went to the University of Oregon where my daughter attended and has been one of the biggest philanthropists for making that university with their athletic facilities and just supporting students. And the Nike World headquarters was literally 3 miles from where I lived. And when I read that book, my level of respect for him just went even higher. And he's just one of those people who he persevered. He had the vision, and if you read that book, you'll see Nike almost didn't make it like several times. It almost did it. And what a story of resilience. And he had to dig deep a number of times. He did.
But what a success story. So I love hearing stories like that because it makes me inspired to keep going through the tough days and through putting out the fires and through not knowing, what's next. I love hearing those stories.
Oh, well, thank you for those 3 recommendations. And again, those links to those books, team, will be on her show notes page, and along with a way to connect with Brooke. And Brooke, I have to say, I'm so impressed with the work you do. I have loved this conversation today. You took us into some really important parts of thinking related to how we show up as leaders, whether it's with a business or even with life. I mean, what you talk about, I think in life, you have to know your position as well. I mean, play your position, just know who are you and what are you doing and why. And it's just been such a delight. So thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I've loved the conversation. It's been great.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.